Hey everyone, this is Necromancer 1040 here. This is a video I wanted to do for a while, and this video is basically titled Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Rule 5 Ban-Worthy Cards. So it's kind of self-explanatory of what I'm going to talk about. But basically, I think a lot of things are going to have to change with the event of the new Master Rules coming out very shortly, especially since this previous ban list. And if you guys don't know what Master Rule 5 is basically Link Summon monsters must go to the extra monster zones, or zones pointed to by Link monsters. Also, Pendulum Summon monsters must go to the main monster zones, pointed to by Link monsters. So, in other words, Synchro, Xyz, Fusion monsters can go to basically any main monster zone, along with the extra monster zones that you want to choose. And since Synchro Summon, XYZ, and Fusion monsters don't strictly have to be summoned to those zones pointed to by Link monsters, multiple monsters from your extra deck can be summoned that are Xyz, Synchro, and Fusion. So basically, Link monsters no longer restrict those traditional old deck mechanics that we've been used to for basically the longest time in Yu-Gi-Oh! So yeah, I'm going to go into more of the specifics of which cards I think are going to be or probably going to be banned. Just keep in mind, this isn't exactly what's going to happen. These are just my thoughts of what I think may happen. So let's get into it. So the first card I think that's going to get banned is Reasoning, and I say this with a very heavy heart. The reason why I say it's with a very heavy heart is because first of all, I love the card Reasoning. I think it's a great extender and combo starter, but that's pretty much the reason why I think it's going to get banned. It's pretty much a free summon, and it has almost no real cost to it. So this is great for combo decks. This basically is a combo deck's dream because they basically get to summon out a monster that they want for free, so long as you tell your opponent to basically call a level from 1 to 12. And if it's any other monster that you basically look at the top of your deck, then the level that your opponent called, you get to summon it. So that's the the advantageous use for it. So it has a very generic use for any deck, and it can basically summon any high-level monster so long as there's no other restriction forbidding it. It allows you to also send cards to the grave that you want to be in the grave, like or just spell or trap cards in particular that have graveyard effects. Let's say if Reasoning doesn't fall through, let's say if your opponent calls correctly for Reasoning, you get a monster into the grave, and that basically benefits most of the decks in the meta currently. So it fuels graveyard-reliant decks in the meta, and it's very easy to activate. Reasoning is it's a spell card. It's not a trap card that you have to set face down first. So Reasoning, it's a very quick activation. It's readily available. The only real cons to Reasoning is you can have it at one copy, and I mean justifiably so for the longest time. And you have to, in order to benefit off of Reasoning's effect, in order to get a monster off the field onto the field, is basically your opponent has to call wrong. And that's pretty easy for a lot of decks, especially because a lot of decks like Spirals have different level monsters, or like any combo deck has a wide array of monsters with different levels. So that's the reason why I think Reasoning is going to get banned. And yeah, we can move on to the other one that we're going to talk to, which is the Strudel, the Lost Dragon's Frisian. So I've had a bit of a mixed thoughts with the Strudel. I still think like maybe it's not going to get banned, but I look at its strengths and I say it's probably going to get banned. So it can be special summoned from your hand or graveyard, which is a big plus. And it's a Dark Dragon tuner monster, which is another huge plus. So the reason why I say the Strudel might get banned is because it makes Dragoon of Red Eyes easier to summon. One of the conditions for Dragoon of Red Eyes to be summoned is it needs a dragon type monster, and we know Dragoon of Red Eyes is coming out real soon, and that's going to be a real problem card that gonna pretty much holds out the field. So for one, the Strudel allows you to have greater board presence since he's very easy to summon out, either from your hand or from the graveyard, which you can easily dump him into the graveyard. So he's kind of not of a brick, and I'll get into later how he doesn't really brick in your hand too much. In some cases, yes, but in others, no. But since he's so easy to summon, he can be used for a link material and especially a synchro material, even XYZ materials. But he can help you build these unbreakable boards. He can be the extra body you need to put on board in order to get your combos rolling. And so on top of all that, he empowers the combo decks and the synchro decks, which are probably going to get stronger. That's basically the biggest thing in Master Rule 5, is that combo and synchro decks especially are going to get a huge power boost thanks to this new Master Ruling. So, on top of all that, you have the strengths and combo decks, but it's also a great Allure of Darkness target. And Allure of Darkness, basically, if you use the card in the past, it's basically a way that you dig through your deck. You draw 2 cards off of it, and you banish 1 dark monster in your hand. And Destrudel's a dark monster, if you didn't know. So Destrudel, he's kind of insane. He's kind of too insane. That's why I think it's kind of like a no-brainer to ban this guy. But and also the fact that he has a very generic use. He doesn't have to be used in specific decks. He can be used in any deck, along kind of like Reasoning in a sense. But he just has so much utility in that sense. His cons or his the things that you don't benefit off of him are: you must pay half your life points, and you must place him at the bottom of the deck when he leaves the field. If you summon him onto the field, that is. And he is a hard once per turn, and you also have to target a monster on your field that's level 6 or below, I believe. Yeah, so those are his cons, and I know you may be thinking, there are a lot of cons to take into account, but he also generates way too many advantages that I kind of think are not very healthy for the game state. I mean, I love the concept of this Strudel, but I think he's just a card that may have to go because he does so much directly for your strategy, and he does so many indirect things that open up combos for your strategy, whether if he's on the field, in the grave, or in your hand, pretty much. And we're going to see later on how other cards can basically make him more useful, which are also ban-worthy in this list. So the other card that I think is going to get banned is Junk Speeder. So Junk Speeder allows you to special summon as many Synchron monsters from your deck with different levels in defense. That already is insane in itself, just taking into account you can summon as many Synchron monsters as you want from your deck. That already can pretty much load up your field if you're using a Synchron deck. And Synchron decks, they've been used as engines in a lot of different other types of builds for the longest time since their release. So that also speaks to how easy they're able to synchro summon with each other and other monsters. Especially one Synchron in particular, which is Junk Synchron, and he can special summon. He could special summon something out from the grave, but he has to be normal summon in order to do that, which is kind of a bummer. But there are ways to recycle Junk Synchron into your hand to where you can do that again. And also with Junk Synchron, if you just normal summon him out onto the field, you can basically pull out any level 2 monster you want and summon out Junk Speeder. So Junk Speeder is really easy to get out to begin with. He's built perfectly for Synchrons, and this, to answer it more directly, the reason why I think Junk Speeder needs to get banned is because it grants the player greater, basically, board presence, and you can potentially put a bunch of tuners onto the field, which enable more synchro summoning or multiple synchro summoning, which is part of the strategy that Synchrons are trying to do. So this opens you up to be able to summon stuff like Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon or Psyframe Lord Omega. Excuse me. And you guys all know the Psyframe Lord Omega loop is a nightmare to deal with. I mean, back when there were 3 copies. Luckily, it's at 1 copy now, but Psyframe Lord Omega can be kind of a problem to deal with, too. Not as much as he was in the past, but he's definitely not a card you want to see being used against you. Also, you can put other problematic synchro monsters onto the field, like Beals. He can kind of be a pain to deal with, also. Um, so obviously, Junk Speeder works best with combo decks and synchro decks such as Shooting Quasar Dragon. Shooting Quasar Dragon had this crazy Exodia loop where you drew all the cards in your deck basically to get Exodia, and so I feel like Junk Speeder is basically an FTK enabler or just like a loop enabler waiting to happen as soon as Master Rule 5 comes along. Um, basically, um, Junk Synchron basically puts more monsters into your grave. By not directly, you'll see what I mean. I'll get into that a little more. So basically, it puts more monsters into your grave, which enables greater access to Synchron effect monsters that use their effects in the grave. So what I mean by that is, remember how I said Junk Speeder basically summons out a bunch of monsters onto your field? Yeah, once you use them as synchro materials, they're going to hit your graveyard, and you can use their effects from the grave, like Jet Synchron. That's JET, if you can't really understand what I'm saying. So I know sometimes my words kind of get muddled, but yeah, basically, if you put stuff like Jet Synchron into the grave, that's kind of insane. Because Jet Synchron, you can discard 1 monster and summon them back from the grave. And so this is kind of the problem I'm kind of basically pointing at, is Jet or Junk Speeder basically enables so many other follow-up plays based off of what he does to begin with. With all that into account, he does have downsides. You must use a Synchron tuner for Junk Speeder's summon, and you can only summon synchro monsters from your extra deck that same turn that you summon Junk Speeder. And he's also a hard once per turn. So I know those sound like huge downsides, but honestly, synchro monsters have a huge and basically oceans of support that's really not a problem for Synchrons. And I mean, we had a whole generation of when synchro monsters were basically the go-to extra deck monsters that you wanted for in your deck. So it's not hard to see Junk Speeder becoming this crazy powerful advantage generating weapon that you use against your opponent. And even if you do just have to summon synchro monsters from your deck that turn, you basically hold out the field until you have your next turn, and then you summon whatever you want, and it's basically game over for your opponent. So that's why I think Junk Speeder kind of has to go. He's a little too broken in that regard, even though taking into account all of his restrictions. He may provide just too much advantage for your opponent to recover reasonably. So that's why I think Junk Speeder needs to go. And that brings me to my other my other pick for this. It's not really a list, but I guess like these few handful of monsters I think really need to go for Master Rule 5, and that's Armageddon Night and Dark Refer. But I'll talk about Armageddon Night first before I get into Dark Refer, because Dark Refer and Armageddon Night, they're very similar, but they do slightly different things. 2 of which that they can really benefit you in other ways that the other card can't benefit. So I'll explain more in a little bit. So basically, Armageddon Night. So Armageddon Night, basically what you can do with him is you can send 1 monster from your deck to the grave when he's summoned. So that's already a great use for zombies. That's already a great use for Dark Synchros, which has been a really powerful deck in the past. So obviously it empowers Dark Synchros, just synchro decks in general, and combo decks. combo decks are almost synonymous with synchro decks. So yeah, Armageddon Night has basically been their go-to combo starter. Um, and Armageddon Knight, he doesn't have to be normal summoned. He can be normal summoned or special summoned to gain his effect. So that you can use something like Reasoning, which is another card I think is supposed to be banned. So you can use Reasoning, and if you get Armageddon Knight out because of that effect, you already have almost like a multi-layered advantage on your opponent. So Armageddon Night already generates a bunch of advantage for you by sending that one dark monster to the grave. And another combo that you can use off of Armageddon Night is the fact that you can send the Strudel from your deck to the grave. That's insane. And I already talked about what the Strudel can do. So yeah, just take a moment to process how much advantage that generates with your combos. I know you're probably not going to run into those cards in your opening hand all the time, but they're bound to come up, and there are ways to search for them, like I've mentioned before with these previous cards. So that's what Armageddon Knight can do, because he really bolsters up the Dark Synchro and Synchro decks in general, also combo decks. Um, but also, like his counterpart, Dark Grepher, what he can do is he can special summon by discarding one level 5 or higher monster from your hand. And so, basically, you can special summon Dark Grepher by discarding, yeah, any level 5 or higher monster in your hand. If you have Destrudo, that's a plus. There's multiple pluses. And basically, you can also discard one dark monster to send one dark monster from your deck to the grave. So basically, he is an Armageddon Knight, but he's a little craftier, I guess. Well, more crafty Armageddon Knight. So yeah, that basically, if you have Destru in your hand and you summon out Dark Refer, you basically ditch Destrudo for cost, and you can send out any other dark monster from your deck that you want. So that's already crazy amounts of advantage that you're generating for the most part. And yeah, and he's also a Lure of Darkness target. Him and so just to be clear here, Armageddon Knight and Dark Refer, they're both Lure of Darkness targets. So if you can't really get use out of either of them, or if it's just not convenient at the moment, you can just Allure of Darkness it away and just draw 2 cards, so long as you banish one dark monster. So that's almost insane what these cards can do in tandem together. And as history speaks for itself, especially in dark synchro decks or any dark warrior deck, Armageddon and Dark Refer have basically been used in tandem at the max amount of copies as possible. Especially that Destrudo's at 3 copies. You can really you can just, you don't even have to search for him too much. He'll just pop up into your hand, and you can basically combo off with Armageddon Night and Dark Refer. So yeah, this has kind of been my list of the most I guess ban worthy cards that I feel really need to get hit by the next ban list. Basically before Master Rule 5 kicks in, and basically if these cards aren't addressed, we may be seeing huge problems in the meta. But let me know in the description down below which cards you guys think will need to get basically banned for this next Master Rule 5. And I would love to see what your thoughts are on that, and because I think this is a really great discussion to have for the state of the Yu-Gi-Oh meta in the upcoming future. But with that pretty much wraps up this video. If you want to help support my content in the future, you can help me on Patreon. You can do so on Patreon. You don't have to do it. It's just if you purely want to. But it really does help the channel, and I appreciate any support you give me, whether if it's on Patreon or just by viewing my content. I just appreciate your support in general, regardless of in what shape or form it is. And with that, I'll catch you guys in the next video, and I'll look forward to great content in the future. Alright, I'll catch you later then. Take care.